Welcome and thanks for clicking our video. This is part of our adventure series. Now let's jump right in and plan a trip to the Elk River in British Columbia. Alright, first let's take a look at where it is. Where is the Elk River? British Columbia, you can see the red dot up here. We have Washington, Idaho, Montana, and just north of the border in British Columbia is where the Elk River is located. You can see as we zoom a little closer that Fernie was right in there, and there is a stretch of the river. There's Fernie. Stretch of the river from Sparwood down to Fernie, and a little bit below that, the main highway runs alongside the Elk River through this whole valley. So a lot of good access, and we'll look at the upper river here in a little bit, but just so you know, the Elk River is a tributary of the Kootenai. Down here, this is Lake Koocanusa. I think that's still what it's called in Canada, but definitely in the U.S. And the Kootenai River, of course, is what's filling that up and backing it up. So down here's the mouth where the Elk River comes in, flows up. And actually it's flowing down, from Fernie downstream towards the Kootenai. The Elk River is not a big secret. It's a very well-known river, so no real secret about how we found it. There's lots of information about the Elk River. There's a couple of really good fly shops I'll highlight later. So we just called, we got some information, watched YouTubes, did a little bit of asking to kind of find maybe the best area for walk and wade. And then we did some searching like what I'm showing you right here on Google Images, Google Maps, to look for some areas that might be likely, and then we just went after it and started, making our own adventure, finding spots, and seeing what they were like, and that's certainly part of the fun, so I encourage you to do that yourself. If you're planning a trip to the Elk River, you might want to consider all of your options and get as much information as you can. I know the main area where a lot of floats happen, it's a bigger river, is from Fernie down. And we have not fished from Fernie downstream much. It's a little bigger. There are areas where you can fish it from shore for sure, and some really good areas, so I have been told, but we haven't fished that too much down in this area. And I have heard there's some really good floats through there down to Elko and the lower river. I know there's also guided float trips and things like that from above Fernie down to Fernie and around this area. And again, we have mostly stayed away from that area because there is so much drift activity in that area. So we've decided to stay above that. I know there's good fishing in that area from both boat and from shore in certain places, and we have fished a little bit in this area above Hosmer. Here's Sparwood, and most of the episodes that you'll see on our YouTube channel or on Prime are going to be occurring between Sparwood and Elkford. And there are some tributaries in here too that we have worked, and there are some specific locations, and I don't know if I'll go into too much detail. If you want to email, I can probably actually, give you a map and direct you to some of the spots we actually fish, but I don't want to put that all out there. But I will say that we did like searching some of the braided sections. That just gave us an opportunity to fish a smaller river. There's a little bit of a braid section there, and then there's a little bit of a braid section there, and of course, you still have to get access. The fording river comes in here, I believe that's what that is. So you still have to make sure that you can get access to this and not trespassing or anything, but I do believe that most of the land in here is pretty accessible, and there are some definite places where roads come out and you can get access to the river. So this section of the Elk River I know is good. And I have been told, too, that even up above Elkford, the river gets smaller, and there's some really good fishing up in there as well. There are lots of places to stay in and around Fernie. So camping, there's RV parks, there's campsites, all kinds of good stuff that way, and then hotels. When we have gone, we've tended to stay in hotels, And we've stayed in lots of them. We stayed in the Super 8 there, which is now different ownership, so I don't want to say I don't know what it's like now. But we also have stayed at this one, Canada's Best Value Inn. It's, you know, kind of low end, cheaper. There's a Best Western that's really nice. But I know this one, I know we've stayed there, and it was a good accommodation. If you're going to fish higher up in the river like we did, it's above Sparwood. There's some nice hotels in Sparwood. We stayed at this Valley Motel. You know, nothing fancy, but it's a nice hotel. It was clean. And there is accommodations in Sparwood too, as far as grocery stores, restaurants, things like that. Both locations have multiple places to get food and groceries and things like that. So depending on where you want to fish, and maybe even you want to stay a little bit down in Fernie and then some up in Sparwood, just depends on where you're going to be spending most of your fishing time. Fly shops in the area. One thing I really love about Fernie is there's a couple great fly shops, and I know there's more guide services and things like that as well. These two we have used and found success with, and I would say of the two, the Kootenai Fly Shop that's here up on the screen and Guiding Company is my preference. They've just been, I would say, more friendly, more good advice for fly fishing and things like that. But not to say that the Elk River Guiding Company. So the other one up there is Elk River Guiding Company, and we've definitely been in that shop, bought some flies from them, and enjoyed their service and their advice. But just, you know, a favorite for me is the Kootenai Fly Shop. So those are the two really cool, fun fly shops to go into. They're not far apart from each other, so you can walk from one to the other, and just it's just fun to go in them and see the flies. You know, if you're like me, fly shops are just a magnet, and flies are, you know, you just can never get enough of them. So it's always fun to see what they've got and that kind of thing. So take a look at either one of them and make it a part of your trip. Local knowledge just helps out so much. I know a lot of times it's fun to go and do it on your own too and just figure things out. But particularly if you're short of time, getting that local knowledge can really benefit you getting to fish sooner. Special licenses and permits for BC. It is a little bit complicated. I know it keeps some people away, but I would give it a try. So from what I understand, and as long as things stay the same, the Elk River is just an open river, and you can pretty much, I think, always get a day license to fish there. So you need your license for BC freshwater fishing, plus you need daily permits for these specified waters. And so the Elk River, though, is nice because it's always an option. You can always go fish there. And the other rivers in the area, which we'll talk about in a little bit, some of those have more limited kind of lottery pick, basically, kinds of things that are hard to get into. So our tendency in planning was to plan a few days on the elk where you knew you could fish, and then try to get like Michelle Creek or Wigwam River, those kinds of things. And whenever you could get those, then fish the other days at the elk kind of thing. So the BC freshwater fishing licenses here on this website, you can click in to go into the e-licensing system, and you kind of get in there and do it. If you're going to do other rivers in the area besides the Elk River, and I believe the Bull River is kind of like the elk as far as open all the time, you do need to get your permits in advance and apply for them, particularly the Wigwam. The Wigwam is very, very intense on getting the days to fish. I believe it's 6 months in advance. I think March or April 1st, something like that, is when it opens up, and you need to get it in right away and do that. Michelle Creek, I think, is pretty popular too, and this is for July and August probably. Things limit a little bit in September in the sense that there's a little bit more days, and then October we did a trip one time and were able to get some for those more high demand rivers in October a little bit easier. So it just kind of depends on when you go. You got to do quite a bit of planning, and I know you have to put some money out in advance to get these permits, per day permits, and I think they're $20 a day. So there's a little bit of like, you know, will the weather be good? Will I be able to make it? So it adds a little difficulty into planning, and if you want to avoid some of that difficulty, then the way to go is probably just to fish the Elk River. Or go with a guide, because a lot of times those other permitted rivers you can go with guides, but just not on your own. So anyway, I hope that helps. Here's the permitting system website, and certainly call the fly shops and get information from them too. But it is a little bit of a challenge figuring out the licensing and the permitting and that kind of stuff. Let's go back to the map and look at some of the other rivers that you can fish in the area while you're in Fernie fishing the Elk River. So the first, probably because it's the most famous or popular to high demand, is the Wigwam. The Wigwam comes in on the lower end of the Elk River down here. This is the Wigwam coming in, and you get there though from the road up off of here. So the Wigwam is an option that's really close to Fernie, and a beautiful, beautiful river to fish. Just over to the west is the Bull River, just off from Cranbrook. The Bull River comes in right here. There's great fishing all up through the Bull River, and you can reach it from up behind Fernie too. So Bull River is a great option while you're in the area in Fernie fishing the Elk River. Another one is Michelle Creek, really popular little fishery that comes in here at Sparwood, follows up this river, or this road right here, Highway 3. So this is the Crow's Nest Pass, and Michelle Creek runs up through here. So another great little fishery while you're in the area. And then if you want to, you can, especially if you're staying in Sparwood, it's not too far to jump over the Crow's Nest Pass and get over here into the Crow's Nest River. And you do switch into Alberta, so you want to make sure you get a new license. There's some great places in this area to fish the Crow's Nest River. And there are some fly shops here. There's the Crow's Nest Angler Fly Shop. And it's a beautiful trip over this pass, so if you have any interest in just kind of taking a day trip and seeing a different area, that is a really nice trip over to the Crow's Nest River. And there's even some more over there, but we won't get too far away. So those are some great options to fish in the Fernie area, besides the Elk River, to make it a little more extended stay and enjoy some more of the area around Fernie. The flies we used on this particular day in August were a Morrish Hopper, and I guess I'll go to that site first. So here's a site that shows how to tie the Morrish Hopper. The one that we caught some fish on that day was the yellow-bodied, but really the hopper pattern wasn't the main fly. The fly of choice was the purple haze. And we used a kind of a traditional purple haze like this, and it worked. But we also used a variety that we got from Kootenai Fly Shop that had two posts, more like wings, white posts, but separated into like wings, kind of like a royal wolf. And then it had a little bit more in the purple body too. It had kind of some sparkle in it, as a thread, a segmentation kind of thing that was sparkly. And that fly worked really well as well, maybe even better than the traditional purple haze. And again, this was for the trip in August. We spent a couple, 3 days on the Elk River and in this area in August, and this fly worked all over that area. Fly line, leader, tippet, I don't think you need much different than your standard 9-foot 5-weight fly rod, something in that range. Floating line, 9-foot to 12-foot leader, and then some tippet on it. And as big as the elk is, I don't think you need to go any smaller than 3X in clarity typically. But on some of the braids and in some of the little channels, it's pretty small water flow and seemed a little clear. I don't know if it just settles down a little bit. So you definitely want to have 4X and 5X with you. I don't think you'd need to go any smaller than 5X tippet, and probably don't need to worry about really long leaders. But if you do start working with smaller flies, of course, smaller tippet and that kind of stuff. So we really like this Orvis. We are sponsored by Orvis Northwest Outfitters, so just put that out there. But we really do like the Orvis Super Strong Plus tippet. We use that a lot. And again, probably with dry flies, I know some people like to use fluoro and some like to use mono. And we kind of go a little bit with both. The lighter we go, 5X, 6X, dry flies tend to like mono. But with the 3X, I don't think it really matters all that much. Either go mono or fluoro for that. One other thing to talk about here is Fernie is just a great little town. I don't do this too often on these, adventure series videos, but just a fun place to be. Historical. There's great hiking trails. The river runs right through the town, so it's beautiful. There's kind of a historic area, lots of little restaurants and things like that. Of course, it's known right now for its skiing. I know of people that do spring skiing and then they'll fish. Even though it's kind of cold, there is fishing available along, and so they'll kind of do a double trip there. So lots to do up there. Really cool town. Hopefully you can make it there for fishing and maybe even combine it with some other things. Just a great location. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day and have a great trip to the Elk River in Fernie, BC. Have fun catching and releasing fish.